Good evening. How are you? It's about 70 degrees, so it's beginning to get a little cooler, and it's going to be cooler at night. Today, there were the hearings with the Attorney General of the United States there. And it seemed to me, although some people say he did great, it seemed to me he was terrible. Not that that surprised me, but he was worse than I thought he would be. And I'll tell you why. He had a prepared statement, and he read it like he'd never read it before. I assume that's not true. I assume he went over it. But he didn't deliver it. He read it. And there were some very strong statements in there. And if he could have carried those values through the hearing, he would have done well. Now, often it's said when you prepare for a trial, for every minute you're in a court, you spend 4 minutes preparing for that minute, or some multiple factor. But built into any argument is preparation, so that not that you can do it unconsciously, but that you know the material so well. It's more like an athlete reflexively dealing with a ball, a football, a punch, whatever it is coming toward him or her. He was certainly not prepared that way. And how does it happen that people are prepared that way? Well, you hear about moot court, which is people pepper you with questions, and you get to practice how in a more combative situation you could make a statement above and beyond like a prepared statement. And if Garland did that, it sure didn't show. The worst one was when he was challenged about whether or not he was against Catholics. And this said to a man with a history in his family of escaping from the Nazis. So it's an intended assault, and it's the kind of rhetorician's trick that I get to be anti-Semitic, and nobody in the room knows it because I'm calling them out versus Christians. Now, any good trick involves misdirection. So the misdirection is, it appears I'm talking about that somebody could target Catholics, And then he, in my opinion, fell into the trap and instead said, how could you say that to me with my family history? Missing the point, bringing out the point without the questioner being responsible for it. Now, did the questioner have all this in mind when he was doing it? It may have been his instinct as a lowlife to ask that question in the first place. But we don't score points saying, oh, that wasn't fair. You shouldn't have done that. Now, what could he have said? He could have said, that is not what we're about, without making it personal. He could have said, you're distorting the facts. Those are not the facts. And you know it because you have the report. And you're asking me about the report, but you only want me to answer a yes or no question, because if I say any more than that, it'll be clear how unfair your question is. Didn't do that. The question of, what about Hunter Biden? Why couldn't he say, whoa, stop the music? I didn't start that case. It was appointed, the man was appointed, Weiss was appointed to handle that case by the Republican administration, whose Attorney General was little more than a lapdog for the White House. And so you're accusing me of fixing the case that was fixed by the man you would have be president? Now, could you say all those things? I don't know. But the purpose of having the meeting is to consider that. to have the facts at your fingertips, to be free to enter the fight and to say what's necessary to win the fight. What is the fight about? The fight is about, do we conduct fair or political prosecutions? The answer is, the last administration conducted political prosecutions. Many told me I should have fired this guy Weiss because he found nothing. He was appointed by a Republican administration. It was clear what his objective was. But I gave him the benefit of the doubt, and he couldn't come up with anything except a prosecution that would happen rarely in any other case, and thus showed no favoritism. Where was that Attorney General? I nevertheless continued him. I gave him more power so that he could investigate to his heart's content, because that's what we do. But note, ladies and germs, he didn't come up with anything serious. How many years? 5 years? How much time does he need to find something? The statute of limitations is 5 years. Where is that kind of argument inside the greatest deliberative body in all human history? Nowhere. Nowhere. They pussyfoot around and they don't make the argument. And you know my prejudice. You can't win the argument you don't make. So Garland appeared soft to me. They said things like, oh, you couldn't wait to get in this case, whereas it was obvious that Garland had done nothing for 2 years. If you're going to say anything about him fixing cases, you would say you'd let prosecutions go against Hunter Biden by an apparently compromised prosecutor and did nothing about Trump, who the world saw tried to overthrow the election with false claims of fraud in the election on a fictitious legal theory. And luckily, some people, including Vice President Pence, lived up to their oath of office. Anyhow, you get the idea. If you're going to come to a fight, come to the fight to fight. Don't sit there like a bump on a log and take the punches in the face until you leave and everybody has to say the emperor has clothes when he doesn't. We suffer setbacks when people not only won't or perhaps can't do their jobs. And this is not a political campaign we can afford to lose if we care about this nation being a republic. So all those people out there commenting how great he did, well, I won't say they're lying, but they're like true believers no matter what the facts are. And the public sees it. They saw the Attorney General of the United States beaten up about Catholics. And last I heard, it's a really big voter bloc. And this guy blew the entire discussion. So I had to turn off the sound in the background for two reasons. I couldn't get work done listening. But the reason I was listening was because it was so terrible. I thought it was humiliating for the Attorney General and for our nation. Members of the Justice Department, if you took a survey, particularly of trial lawyers who know what an argument means, they would tell us that. Mark Twain talked about giving public speeches. And he said, you know, people like to imagine the after-dinner speech in which as they're just getting out of their chair, having been introduced in a glowing profile, and they have a bon mot that they say that gets the entire audience laughing as you work toward the rostrum and turn toward them and give them another one. Now, Mark Twain says, yeah, but that's no accident. It looks like it was on the spur of the moment, but it was well considered before it happened. Every part of that presentation was gone over and prepared so that he could honor the guests who brought him there to speak, or her to speak. If Garland went through such a process, It was not evident. It was not evident. And, instead of saying, well, I want to answer the other things, he should have said something funny. Like, what's the matter, member? You can't handle the truth? You don't want me to answer those things? Okay, I'll answer this one. Of course I'm not against Catholics. Of course I don't think they should be held up and treated in a disrespectful way. But I will tell you this. Parents who break up meetings of local school boards and spout lies and compromise and bully the children in the school and deny them to medical care they need, whether it be vaccines or other things, who don't believe there's a place for transgender or LGBTQ people in the school system, that the parents may not, nor the schools, accommodate those things, that the schools may not resist the discrimination against those children. Where's that Garland? Did he write the memo about what was going on in the school boards across the country? In Loudoun County, just across the river from where he makes his office? So, I suppose some of my friends will say, how can you say anything critical of our Attorney General? Well, it's deserved. He failed the test. And this is a time for people to be on their game, to do the best they can. And Attorney General, if that was the best, he never should have been appointed that position. Perhaps he only got it because he didn't get to the Supreme Court. And all I've seen since he's been Attorney General suggests he probably shouldn't have been on the Supreme Court either. So all those people who support the Attorney General, instead you should be sitting with him in the office formerly occupied by Robert Kennedy Jr. Robert Kennedy, who from that office prosecuted some of the worst people in American history, including Hoffa. And so, how does Garland match up to that? And also Rand. Hard to believe he had anything to do with the bombing that they say shows he has that strength to do the fight. I don't know what his story is. I don't know what Biden has found acceptable that he may have whispered to this guy. But wherever it comes from, he's no Attorney General. And he's not protecting us. He's compromising our democracy and our republic. So, I don't know. That's what I got on my mind. And so I say goodbye to you until tomorrow, when we can have another walk in my cathedral of trees. Bye-bye.